My name is Nick Holdsworth. I don't know why I have to look at my notes to introduce myself, but I am the board chair of Ambit, which is a sponsor of this event. We are a conversational AI platform. We've actually been doing this for about 6 years, and one of the things we'll talk about is that AI has been around for quite a long time, even though it feels like it's just exploded. I also have an early stage startup of my own called Prosaic, which uses AI to analyze bank data and find tax-deductible transactions. And we're just in the very early stages of developing that. So I'm pretty embedded in it right now. It's a very exciting time. Previous to that, I worked at a company called Xero, which you may have heard of. I was running their app store. So I'm very interested in marketplaces, app stores, recommendations, all of those kind of retail dynamics. And previous to that, I was the CMO of a tech startup called Vend, which did point-of-sale software for smaller retailers, but certainly strong in the retail space. Look, my impressions of AI, as I said, it does feel like the overnight success that's been 50 years in the making. It certainly feels like an incredibly exciting and also slightly scary time, and I think that's one of the themes that we're going to talk about today. I'm using it myself. I'm going to ask each of the members to talk about their last use of it, and they're not allowed to cheat, otherwise I'll bring up their browser history, but I literally used it this morning to fit my notes onto 2 pages so that I didn't have to bring an extra piece of paper with me. And so we are really already living and breathing this, but we're also wondering what does that mean for our jobs, for our industries, and for how we kind of reach and connect with our customers. The other thing we want to talk a bit about is how it does seem to be creating a lot of content and a lot of noise. And increasingly, marketing has really been at the front of AIs from what we've seen in terms of generating content, putting things out quickly, but sometimes it also feels when you're searching on Google for how to sand a picnic table that you have to wade through 20 pages of articles on the history of picnic tables before you actually just get to the 5 instructions on what you need to do. So more content is not necessarily better, and we're certainly going to see an explosion of that. So I'm going to, at that point, ask each panel member to introduce themselves. Just tell us your name, your role, what you last used AI for, and maybe just your kind of quick impressions before we get into the details of it. And I'll hand to you, Matt, first.
Hey, everyone. Matt Bain, Marketing Director at Spark. So responsible for Spark and Skinny brands, all of our data and automation capability, and also Curious, which is one of our data analytics subsidiaries. So I've been at Spark 4 years after about 20 years in Europe. We started our AI journey probably at scale about 3 years ago. So I think we've got about 200 data scientists, data analysts in our business that are working on that at the moment. So I can talk a bit about how advanced we are, what we've got to with that on that journey. Last thing I used it for was to create a vision for our finance team, because our CFO was like, we need a vision. I delivered in 20 minutes about a 20-page presentation on the future of finance, what a team looked like, their skill sets. To which he replied, AI, and I said, yeah, because he knows I don't know that much about finance. So that was the last time I used it.
Great, and welcome, Spencer.
Well, you put me to shame. I mean, the last time I used it was this morning. I'd like to start with a joke. So I tried to get chatbot GPT to write me a joke about AI. Do you think it could? No. It does not have a sense of humor, people. I task you all to try.
What was the joke, though, Spencer?
Well, there was one, but it was a computer joke. Why was the computer cold? Because it left the windows open. I don't even want to tell it, but there you go. That was the best it had, honestly. Good. That was it. No, look, you rightly say that it's been an overnight success that's been going on for 30 years. But there's no doubt that it is the biggest, I think, shift in tech since the advent of the internet. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. Although now every company you talk to manages to weave AI into their narrative somewhere. We had a double glazing company speak to us a couple of weeks ago. Apparently they're double glazing. Manufacturing process is aided by AI. Can you believe that? It might be true. Yeah. The point is everybody's doing it, right? The interesting thing is, Matt and I both actually were at South by Southwest, lucky to be there this year, and the whole thing was basically AI. Every presentation you went to, they were talking about AI everywhere. And I watched the trends presentation from the year before, and it was hardly mentioned. So that's how quickly it's jumped into our consciousness. Obviously, it's the fastest growing technology ever. OpenAI is the fastest growing platform ever. All those stats just keep, ticking off. And yeah, the final thing is we've been at AI for years, driving our business. But it's these large language models, LLMs, the TLA. that is the real breakthrough change, I guess, that's happening right now.
Great, thank you.
Over you.
And over to Hayley.
Cool. I'm Hayley, I'm head of social at Dentsu. So the last time I used AI was this morning to batch create a whole lot of content for a client. They have regular templates that they use and a whole lot of testimonial content. So basically I just uploaded all the quotes into an Excel doc, uploaded it to my AI software, and in 2 minutes I had around like 20 pieces of content that now I can batch schedule. So yeah, it definitely makes me more efficient, but it does have its limitations, which we will talk about shortly.
Great, and welcome, Connor.
Hi.
Oh,
Drama.
oh, yeah, this is the Krypton factor test.
Hello. I'll go with this one.
Yeah.
Hey, Connor, co-founder, co-CEO of Tracksuit, and I don't know if you know what Tracksuit is, but we're a startup. We do market research at scale, brand tracking that's beautiful, affordable, and always on. And yeah, I think the last thing I used AI for was to write, don't tell our chief of staff this, but his 90-day KPIs. Edited heavily, but you know, it just really helped me get off the mark. And then I think my overall take on AI, I'm optimistic for marketers about how they sit in the AI world of like, it's a very easy world in which to create products and to create content, and the differentiator will be brand and good marketing and community, and so that's my hot take.
Great, thank you. How many, quick show of hands, how many of you used AI to do your job better in the last 30 days? Wow. It's quite incredible, really. In fact, my wife started a new job, and she keeps texting me questions like, can you work out the percentage difference in revenue between this year and last year? And then I text AI and text her back the answer. So I'm an AI intermediary already. A couple of things stood out from that for me, which is like, it has been around for a long time. It's easy to forget that. It just feels like the acceleration recently has been much faster. My observation is it's hard to determine whether the acceleration is real or just hyped about. The internet kind of happened slowly, but there wasn't an internet that everybody could talk to each other about the internet happening like there is today. Even when the mobile sort of took off with the iPhone back in 2007, it still took 3 or 4 years for companies like Instagram to really begin to blow up. It feels like this is moving a lot faster, but actually it does also, it's important to remind ourselves we're just at the kind of beginning of what's going to be a really important transformation, and while there are key things you can start to use it for now, one of the things we also want to kind of share is our reflections on what it might mean in sort of 3 to 5 years and beyond. And so I think on that note, maybe I'll throw it to Matt from Spark, because you guys have already been executing and using AI, but not just large language models as well, but some of the more predictive AI based on structured data. Do you want to just talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we started this journey 3 years ago at scale because we realized that we're a telco annuity business. Our addressable market's about 10% of the total market each year, right? People who churn, come to the country. So that's 1% a month, right? So by definition, 99% of your advertising is wasted because only 1% of your market are in market in any given month. So we worked out that if we could predict who was in market that day, then we could 10, 20x the return on our ad budget. So we started building models to go, can we predict when someone's in market, right? We've got a lot of data on our first-party data. We found out use case by use case we could do that. We got to 20x, so from a 1% conversion rate to a 20% conversion rate on a message is where we are now. And we have about half New Zealand's our base, so we're privileged in that respect. So these models are scanning our base every day and only communicating with our customers who are in market. So 80% of all the CRM work is, by the end of this year, will be done by machines, not people. So therefore, our people are focusing. I think this is an interesting... We're lucky we got scale. So 3 years ago, this stuff wasn't available to smaller businesses, but what we're seeing now is the democratization of that capability so that this stuff's becoming available and usable by much smaller businesses. So if you think about, most of our advertising is based on averages. We use segments. We banned segments because we said segment is an average population. That's a really rubbish way to describe a person. Let's focus on individuals. And small businesses now can start to think that way and go, how do we deliver the right message to the right person at the right time, rather than some arbitrary description of what an average customer might look like. So I think that for us has been interesting. The hype around generative AI is real, but we divide it into 2 boxes. So we've got predictive AI, which is the models we've built, which understand our customer base and can predict the next best thing for each customer. Right, that's cool. Large language models use unstructured data, right? So they just make shit up. They actually don't you got to realize they don't understand anything. They have no context. They just make up what they think the next thing you want to hear is. What's the next word, right?
If you actually,
So our brain has context, understands the market, understands each customer, understands their preferences, price sensitivities, all that stuff, and then predicts. Large language models, totally different thing, right? They don't have any of that predictive capability. They don't have any understanding. All they do is regurgitate based on whatever you've fed them on. So I think we need to also make that distinction about where the value will be added.
it's quite remarkable if you can actually mentally wrap your head around how they work. But do you remember when Google was first sort of predicting what you might write in a text? Well, it's just like that, but instead of predicting the next word, it predicts hundreds and hundreds of words. But effectively, that's all it's doing. It's kind of predicting what might come next based on all the information that's read before.
So I would say also the fear with my teams is this stuff going to replace all of our jobs? We haven't seen that. So what it made is every marketer in my team way more productive than they were before, right? Because they're not sending emails out. They're spending all their time understanding households, customers, what products, promotions should be put together to feed into the system. So the first stage of this hasn't been cut your marketing team in half. It's been, wow, every person's more valuable than they were a year ago because they're now using the system. Generative AI, I think, is a slightly different thing. I think this is where we do go, people creating content. You don't need 10 people anymore. You need one to review the content. So I think that we're going to see a different kind of impact on our businesses and business models with this next iteration.
I might throw to the panel if anyone's got anything they want to add to that.
Well, ours is just pretty similar, story to that. There's no doubt that in AI, big is beautiful. So, the best, the biggest, the most GPUs in your computer, the more efficient it works with AI. So we set up a division about 3 or 4 years ago, AI research. And really for us, it was around detecting and removing harmful content, first up, and also driving the discovery engine that you see on social. If everybody opens their feed, everybody's feed is different because we're making recommendations. So getting better at making those recommendations on a lot less data. And then Apple decided to, with iOS 14, was the next stage in our journey, to limit the amount of data that could be captured at that point in the journey. So AI, we turned AI on our ad products, and it's basically making decisions with a lot less data. And now it's making them even better than it was before. And that's how quickly that whole space has marched forward. Yeah.
One of the trends we're seeing with AI, as you talked about, is people are better at their jobs, more efficient. They can get the start of a KPI document written out without having to think about it from scratch. I guess in the world of Tracksuit, one of your value propositions is making kind of complicated, expensive tools available to smaller businesses, and we're certainly starting to see that. How do you see AI having an impact on the services that you provide?
Yeah, I think it's massive. I mean, what we're doing, I guess, is collecting a huge data set on how brands grow and the quant and qual behind that. And so being able to ask the unstructured data part of that questions about what insights there are and to help our clients use those insights to grow their business better and faster is super interesting. There's also it was an interesting segue off the previous comment about the large language models having no context, but actually you can feed them context. And so feeding them blogs and content and books from every one of the best marketers in the world, and then asking them to look at a dashboard of how a brand's been tracking over 3 years and be like, what do you think this brand should do compared to their competitors? And then getting insights like that is super fun. So we're playing with stuff like that. There's really easy stuff not easy, but just more simple, removing bad data, and that's historically been a person who's highly trained trolling through large spreadsheets to figure out what's bad data, but now it's very simple. And then simplifying, looking at data and then simplifying the insights out of it, just in normal, plain English language is a huge part of it too. Just being able to say, hey, looking at this massive dashboard or this set of slides, tell me what is interesting. And it's your brand is growing with women between the ages of 25 and 35. And it's cool, thanks. That's what I needed to present to the board. Great.
Yeah, I think as marketers, for a long time, we often feel kind of dependent on data analysts to give us insights, or engineers to code web pages, and AI is effectively making that more accessible and making people able to be more effective at what they do without all of those dependencies. And in some ways, everybody's data is a mess, I'm sure. Especially as a marketer, we should have a single source of truth, but actually the need to have it so structured and so well put together in real time is it's not going to go away completely, but certainly you can get more value out of the data you have faster without having to worry about having the perfect data right now. I think that's some of the power we'll start to see. Haley, do you want to talk about maybe some of the conversations you're having with clients around AI and what it means for you as an agency?
Yeah, I'm definitely having a lot of conversations with clients about this, particularly around them thinking they can do a lot of it themselves now and kind of cut agencies out. I definitely think you still need to have that expertise. As I alluded to before, AI is, it has its limitations. It doesn't really have that emotion or human element, especially when you're creating content. I don't think it will ever really have that full, storytelling feel. And as we talked about, it can't even create a good joke. But it does definitely prove value in the sense of things like community management. So you can use AI to filter comments, so you're making sure that your team's not spending so much time trying to remove, bot accounts or spam comments and things like that. They can also do prompt replies as well. As I'm sure you all know, social media is all about having those really engaging two-way conversations. So we've found that AI is being able to help continue that. So being able to train clients in that sense has been really helpful for us.
So how do brands get cut through when everyone has a superpower with AI? What are your thoughts on that? Anyone?
Well, yeah, just sort of, following on from what you're saying, I think probably the biggest disruption at the moment from a marketing perspective is, and Matt, you were talking about it, in terms of what's our target audience for that brand, or what target audience we're looking at for that particular product. As far as we're concerned, and particularly in retail right now, it's not gone, but pretty much gone. You don't need to think about the targeting. At the end of the day, what AI will do is find you the person that is most likely to buy your product. It doesn't really matter what audience that they're in. So a lot of the platforms out there now are offering products where it will go out and find you that conversion. So you're not sitting there thinking, right, what creative do we build for this particular cohort, etc. And then the next phase of that is the generative AI piece, which is building multiple, creatives in half an hour. So you can have 30 creative executions done within an hour, let's say, and then just let them run and see which one's working the best. So that it just speeds everything up, simplifies, speeds everything up, speeds up processes, and performs a hell of a lot better as well.
I'd add to that and go, potentially it doesn't change very much, right? So you get regression to the mean in that right now we talk about best practice. I say to my team, best practice is by definition an average. The average business fails, let's not use best practice, right? Let's define what it should be, is the kind of the way we think. That's testing and learning a lot. Now, once everyone's got AI, you have a first mover advantage, and then quite quickly everyone will have it, right? And then it comes back to what are the best brands today do? They're in touch with what the cultural trends are, what actually matters to New Zealanders. They're ahead of where the AI will be. The AI will have a hard time predicting what's in the hearts of New Zealanders, what's next for them, what will capture their imagination that isn't already out there. And I think it will make that element of the creativity more important and strip away a lot of the rest of the mundane stuff, which I think could be a really good thing for what a lot of us do from day to day.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just extend on that. So I think a lot of success that brands have had is exactly that, is really finding trends and what the audiences are engaging with and want to see. And I've seen Ben & Jerry's over in the States have a great example of this. They used AI to track what the audience were really interested in, and they found that ice cream and breakfast had been used in like 50 different songs. And so they were like, why don't we create a range of breakfast flavoured ice cream. So now they've got like Fruit Loop ice cream, and it's now one of the top sellers in the US. So I feel like there's lots of cool creative ways that brands can utilise AI from that sense. I haven't really seen too much in New Zealand yet, but definitely a massive opportunity. So I'll be watching all of you to see what you can come up with.
I would love to hear some other examples, if you guys can share any companies you've seen doing really interesting things with AI.
I've got another one.
Yes, please.
So Sephora, they use a chatbot on Facebook, and they have prompts around like what's your skin type, what products are you interested in, and basically as a user you go through all of these questions, and then they then recommend products based on your answers. And when they first implemented this, they had a sales increase of around 10%. And I've personally used it myself, and I've found every recommendation to be spot on. So that's just another way that you can implement AI into your social channels to get a direct sale as well.
Anybody from the warehouse here? Warehouse? Good. I can use this case study. No, I'm joking. We actually got it signed off yesterday, but and it is a bit of a pump up for us, but that's fine. We did some work with the warehouse over the last 6 months, and they inserted, it's called Advantage shopping campaigns, which are basically AI-driven. It's an AI-driven product on our platforms. So they inserted that into their always-on performance layer and tested that against previous performance, so the budget stayed the same. I've got the numbers here because I can't remember the numbers. Hold on. Well, I'll just get those numbers. So there was 73% increase in omni-channel ROAS. So you look at those numbers, and we had to should we go back and just make sure that's correct? And a 50% increase in sales. And literally every metric we looked at was up. And it just goes back to that point again, not just on our platform, but let the systems do the work. Yeah. Let it do its magic. You don't know better than the system, is the advice that I would leave people with.
Yeah, I think we're starting, like some of my agencies in the room, so we're already looking at, currently we'd brief a campaign and go one a quarter. So you pick a concept, you throw all your money, millions of dollars between one big campaign. Pretty fucking risky, but that's what we've been doing for tens of years. Versus agency, I need 20 ideas every 2 weeks, and we're going to feed them into the machine, and then we're going to double down, make a TV ad of the one that's got like mad traction in the market, right? So you're not guessing now, you're going, where's the early adopters of this idea, what's blowing up, and you use that signal to double down on that kind of creative area or concept. So I think it will change potentially the way that we operate once it is evolved at scale, yeah.
Connor, have you got something?
I think like sort of doubling down on my first statement at the start, where AI is super useful for creating lots of ideas, but the curation and the choice comes from the brand leaders and the creatives who are living and breathing the brand, and that's where people will stand out. And like, I probably am going to butcher the name because I'm not cool enough, but Jacquemus, like the really cool fashion brand, like they went viral after pushing some AI-generated content that was just like fantastic and kind of mind-blowing, and most people didn't actually know whether it was real or AI-generated. It was like washing machines in the middle of streets in Paris spilling out handbags and people flocking to get them, or like cars that looked like their handbags and people couldn't tell whether they were real or fake. And one of the things that's always important with a brand is to like stretch the brand as far as possible into what your ICP really align with. And I think like using AI to produce ideas that actually go beyond where you would be comfortable going initially, and stretching it and prompting it to do that, and then curating and choosing the ones you really like. And I think that's an example of that.
You can also have fun with it. I wrote a job description in the voice of Cookie Monster, and it was surprisingly effective. I didn't actually advertise with it, but I had fun with it.
You should advertise with it.
I should have advertised with it. I would have hired Cookie Monster. So I guess what we're kind of summarizing is that while we're seeing some of the front-end impacts of AI through recommendation algorithms and content, really what makes you stand out as a brand is still the basics of good marketing, right? Emotional and rational connection, understanding your audience, building great experiences. I actually went on the PIX tour with my family a couple of years ago, and you can't create that digitally and through AI. And while it was a free tour, we certainly spent a couple of $100 in the shop, so it was a very effective form of marketing. And actually what we're seeing is, from the way you're describing it, it's really in the back end, the marketing operations, analytics, tooling, creation of content where the power is starting to emerge. I guess a sort of counterpoint to that, what are some of the risks that we're seeing and we're hearing about that are on our minds? And maybe I'll start with yourself, Spencer.
Oh, thanks. I mean, easy one. Well, it's not. We're not at Skynet yet, people. No one serious out there is saying sentient or general AI is about to happen anytime soon. I'm not saying it will never happen, but that's potentially decades away before these machines get to that point. It's a little bit like the horse has bolted in this space. When Chatbot GPT launched their model, it caught everybody by surprise, and then everybody's been scrambling, following. However, there is a drive. A lot of businesses are getting together and trying to encourage governments to do some smart regulation, quick smart regulation against AI. It's called Responsible AI Frameworks and Processes, I think is what it's going to be called. And the companies are pushing for this. It is a bit of an arms race. I hate to use that word, but it is a bit of an arms race in terms of it's hard to stop. Even the noises coming out of OpenAI is that they're not slowing down, even though they're saying openly that we're not for profit and all this stuff. That they are going pretty fast. So I think hopefully some frameworks will start to come out in the next 12 months, which people will adhere to. You can't govern what happens in every single country around the world, but certainly in the ones that we can, I think you'll start to see that a lot quicker than we've seen it in other areas.
Hayley, do you want to answer the question?
Yeah, I would just say use AI as your assistant, not as a content strategy. Otherwise, all brands will start to sound the same and you'll lose that trust and connection with your audience. You'll always need a layer of that kind of human emotive element in all content. So yeah, just a risk for everyone to start sounding the same and people to tune out.
Connor?
Yeah, I think I just agree with that point. Like, don't let your brand become a bland. And like that, there will be companies that are completely AI generated and pretty successful, but at least for the near future, the ones that will win will probably have humans behind them curating and really standing for the brand and what it means. And yeah, just be polite to ChatGPT because I think it'll remember who is nice and keep us around as the helpful servants when it does take over.
When it generates most of its content from Reddit and Discord and then comes back saying it's lonely and we wonder why.
Yeah.
Matt, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think we're looking at this at the moment because when we started our journey, we had to set up ethical AI principles. We've got them published on our website. We've got AI ambassadors and privacy ambassadors embedded through our teams to make sure that our use of data is in line with privacy policies and stuff. Don't think that changes that much. I think the difference with the large language models is you don't want to be pumping your proprietary data up into the public cloud. So don't let your employees do that, and we're really strict about that, right? It's a bit like uploading all of Spark's documents into Google Cloud. You just don't do that. We've got a secure environment. So we've got ChatGPT, our own instance in-house that we train and that we use. And then I'm happy for our teams to ask questions of Bard, right? But not upload anything in. So I think it's the same principles that you'd have for your existing security privacy policies. And the same sorts of guardrails, right? So if you're going to do this at scale, you need teams that focus on model bias and make sure that the right answers have been given. We're rolling this out with HR, so you don't have to ask an HR partner. You ask a bot and it tells you, but you have to train that bot so it doesn't read an email and get the wrong idea and start hallucinating and tell someone the wrong policy, right? So it's the same as building any kind of data product. You need to put the guardrails around it and make sure you've got that in place.
Yeah, it's reasonable to say that right now there is a sort of forgiveness of the hallucination. People know that it's a bit magic, and if the answer's wrong, they're kind of comfortable with it, but that nice to have may become a must-have over time, right? And so you don't want to be the lawyer that writes a brief for a client and gets it wrong because they pulled it all off of AI and ends up in the media. So certainly at Ambit, so our product takes the sort of AI conversational experience but uses your proprietary data from your enterprise, so you can effectively feed it with your own website, your own help system, your own knowledge base. And I think that's what we're seeing with GPT. So GPT is a large language model that's basically trained on all of the internet, and it's a really great way to get moving quickly and to try stuff. Obviously being careful that you're not uploading proprietary information or copyrighted data. But then the progression of that is what we think will happen is that the language models will be available as tools that you can deploy inside of your own organization. And if you have large data sets, you can use that data to have that as your advantage.
I think for smaller businesses, I think it could be really exciting, right? So the stuff I'm looking at globally that we're looking at licensing actually learns your brands. You've got multiple brands, you can feed content in it, or then publish it to both brands, tone of voice, everything perfect, right? Which is great when you've got lots of stuff happening across a big organization. I think the rate at which startups are going to be created for guys that are smaller than us that can then have that capability, where you go, this is a proprietary large language model that's learnt my brand, which means that everything that gets pumped out is spot on. It'll even go like manpower, no, that's not inclusive, we don't use that word. Like it's really quite amazing what this stuff's doing now that's just available at scale, but soon it'll just be in a couple of years available for everyone. So I think my advice would be get across it, make sure you're understanding it and keep your eye on what's coming out and adopt quickly where you see stuff that's applicable to your business, but understanding that it's going to change entirely. It's like we're at the beginning of the dot-com boom again, right? People are publishing their first websites with a few links and some pictures. We're there. Like Flash hasn't been invented yet. We haven't got an iPhone. Like that's going to go mental. We can't actually anticipate the exponential growth. So I think, I'm actually really optimistic about what it can do for business.
I'm going to do that uncomfortable thing where I open the floor to questions and hope that somebody puts their hand
One at a time.
One at a time. Does anybody have any questions for the panel? Yes, thank you. Oh, yeah.
Probably one for you, Matt. Is it the death of Salesforce? Now you're doing all your CRM through AI?
No, it's interesting. So we've got, we just decided, I don't know why, just to buy everything. So we got Salesforce, Adobe, sometimes we bought it twice. And what we realized is all that stuff's really interesting and useful, but AI is the orchestration layer. So it doesn't replace Adobe. It doesn't. So our AI brain will go, oh, Matt Bain's in the market. He's moving house. Send him, I don't know, an offer. Brain will go, this is the offer for him. He's a cheap bastard, price sensitive. Give him a half price something. Then Adobe will receive that and go, oh, he's on the app right now, and it will do the last mile. So I think what we're seeing is that, and Adobe has its own AI. So what we're seeing is there's an orchestration. So if you've got MailChimp or whatever, it won't replace that, but it will sit across the top and make sure that whatever that's doing is an order of magnitude more valuable than it was. I think, and that's the trend we've seen. So you don't throw all that away yet. You're going to still need it.
It is a really interesting. It's a very interesting question. I mean, certainly the Salesforce, Marketo, the tools like this emerged through the last big technology shift, which was the move to the cloud, and I guess to some extent mobile. If we're at the start of another great technology shift, they should be scared of being disrupted, just like the companies that they disrupted too. And hopefully that will have an impact on the massive amount of money that we pay to companies like Salesforce and others. And so I think it ultimately will drive more innovation. But they have a pretty compelling position advantage, most of these companies, and they've certainly been thinking and doing a lot in this space for a long time. Any other questions from the floor? Oh, we've got one down here. The microphone is coming your way.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Christina from Chinese Herald. I have a question for Haley. I'm very interested in what you try for using AI. When you're doing the social media with AI reply and comment things, do you give guideline, or how do you, because sometimes it's really sensitive what you're saying, what you reply? Thank you.
Yeah, so a lot of the times you can include like little prompts, so what your brand tone of voice is, and other little kind of nuggets to help the replies. But a lot of the time, as I said, limitations, so we do have to go in and structure replies. It's just good just to have a little bit of thought starter, I guess, to help the team construct the replies in a more timely manner.
Has anyone used Grammarly yet? I think they're coming out with that new tool which you kind of feed your tone of voice into, and then it helps you draft things in that tone of voice, which is going to be pretty cool. Just as an aside.
I feel better about my children's terrible handwriting and grammar, that will be solved in the future, but I worry what they'll do without it, to be honest. Do we have any other questions from the floor? We've got one down here. You're welcome to just shout it out and I can repeat it if... I just check everybody heard that, or do you want me to repeat it? So will our robots make the physical experience more valuable in the face of all of this kind of automation and AI? Is that the question? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Anyone want to take that one?
I mean, right now, omni-channel is obviously super important, but there's no doubt that, as you saw with the Pix factory, that retail is changing at a pace, and there's different reasons to go in store, and there's different reasons to go online. And obviously, products change that dynamic as well. So I think it will evolve, but I certainly don't think it means it'll go away at all.
I just think as a brand, you'll stand out a lot more in those situations, especially if brands do start sounding the same online through the likes of ChatGPT. So I would definitely, as a marketer, be considering any sort of unique experiences that you can bring to life to surprise and delight your audiences in fun and different ways.
Yeah, a couple of views there. One is, so we're currently feeding into our call centres and stores next best action for humans that come in the stores when they identify themselves. So if they have an account, our system doesn't just work online, it works multi-channel, so that will be a thing where it helps to improve experiences across all your channels. And then a personal view of mine is that, if you look on TikTok now, what the kids are creating using generative AI, you can't actually believe anything's real anymore almost. And that might be a really good thing if you just can't believe anything you see on, social channels or anywhere like that. Because actually then you go, then I think maybe real people do become more valuable than where we are now. I don't know. It's just a hunch. When everything is just, when 1 in a billion pieces of content is actually a real one, rather than the other way around, what does that do? Don't know. But I think that will change some things.
Yeah, and I think the general theme of AI making content, whether that be an experience digitally or personal shopping or whatever, table stakes for any brand, and you'll be able to just mock that up in seconds, no matter how much money you have or people you have on your team, that then the kind of premium version becomes an actual in-person event. And so I imagine there'll be nothing that would build trust like an in-person event, but it also depends on your brand and where you sit. It might be leaning into digital or it might be leaning into personal.
I always wonder whether I'd go to a festival where AI was playing the music, even if it played it better than a human. Would that be the same? Maybe I'm just not a boomer, but...
Isn't that just a DJ? Maybe take one more question from the floor. Yes, down here.
Just thinking about the marketer of the future, so 5 years' time, what sort of key skills would we need to have to survive in the AI world?
That's a great question. I'll repeat that. What key skills will the marketer of the future need to have in, say, 5 years and beyond? And
I think we've said it a few times. I think it's that sort of upfront ideation, strategy, good thinking, spending more time on that part of the process, because a lot of the other processes will be automated, I guess. So it's that really valuable thinking up front that will make the difference.
And just a creative. We need to stand out. So I think, you should never lose that and finding ways to be unique in this space.
Yeah, what we're seeing is, so we work agile, so our squads were initially data squads and then marketing squads, and then it was marketing people and data squads to make sure the data products were built with the end user, and then data people in the marketing squads. So you couldn't train everyone, you had to just make sure it evolved. Then when more and more automation happens, it actually changed. We're going, should we be hiring behavioural scientists now? Because actually that's something that traditionally a client wouldn't have, but if the machine's doing the marketing, then actually that insight's more important. So we don't know, but it makes you think really differently about what's the skill set you need when all the mundane kind of business as usual work's being looked after. Now what could you add to your team to generate that insight that you wouldn't necessarily have around your audience and your brand?
And maybe for me, I think probably don't really know, so being curious and open to trying things is probably really important. I'm 35. When ChatGPT sort of hit, I was like, oh God, I remind myself of my dad typing on a laptop. So it gave me that feeling of already being a dinosaur, watching the sales development reps come into our team and fill a lead list within seconds, and I was sitting there being like, typing into Google, what competitors are there to this? And just being like, oh, shit. So like, I think just that the rate of change is exponential, right? So you want to be remaining curious. You want to just try things and then not become a dinosaur like my dad.
I do have a sort of philosophical question where it seems like it's, in some professions like law, accounting, it's getting 90% of the job done, but you still want a lawyer beside you in court so you don't go to jail. You don't want a machine, or you still want to check with an accountant whether you can file this tax return or not. And so it seems like it's accelerating the knowledge of people who already have good skills and experience. My question is then, what does that mean for people who don't have that yet and used to learn that through doing a lot of that grunt work? And so I guess thinking about people at the start of their career today who maybe used to learn through rote or through doing the sort of heavy lifting of content writing and copywriting and digital SEO, if that work can be automated, how do you kind of learn that and get to that position of experience? But then I also see the way that my children use AI and use iPads and are completely digitally savvy, and they'll be far ahead of me by the time they're, not even 16. And so I'm not too worried about them, but it's definitely something that's on my mind. Maybe one more question, then we can probably close the floor. Okay, one at the back. Do you want to just shout it out, and I'll do my best to repeat it. So how do we trust what we're seeing? Is that, yeah. Anyone want to have a stab at that?
I don't know.
Yeah, man says it's all fake. As long as it's all fake, it's fine.
It depends what decision you're making off the back of seeing something, I think, is the answer to that question. If it's just fun that you're seeing, just for entertainment, then not really an issue. If you're going to make a important life decision off the back of seeing a piece of content for your health or something, then buyer beware for sure. Yeah.
I think also just taking note, especially on social, if it's coming from a verified page. So I feel like those little badges will become even more important, and as a user, you'll be relying on knowing that the content that you are getting is from a reputable source.
Yeah, I think maybe I heard a good talk on AI recently where they talked about, and I mentioned this before, that there is a relatively low threshold for hallucinations where people are kind of forgiving of it because they understand that it's AI. Companies are kind of building that into their user experience, right? So if you are using AI, as long as you let your customers know that this is AI generated and they've got an easy way to get to a real human, if it's not giving them the answer they want, there's a little bit of forgiveness around that at the moment. That may change over time, but I think you can build trust into it by making it kind of clear where something is or isn't being used by AI. And generally at this stage in the cycle, it seems like consumers are understanding of that.
And maybe from a brand perspective, like as marketers, we want to build community and build trust within that community, and sort of that's that transparency point, and trust will come with the people who are familiar with you, and that's really important from a marketing perspective. But I probably would say, you don't want to trust everything. You want to be a little bit skeptical until you're within a community that you can trust.
Yeah,
and in 6 months' time, I'll answer all these questions completely differently because it's moving that fast.
It's moving so fast. Yeah, and I mean, I think if you think about the National Party ads that were generated through AI, had they actually been honest that they've been generated through AI, perhaps that authenticity may not have been an issue. The fact that they were tried to be passed off as real was really what the heart of the problem was. And I guess that's an important lesson for brands.